my arm. Suddenly thought, I've lost my arm. My arm had come off. After getting the tourniquet on, I saw that I was moving my index finger and thumb. And I was like, well, that's not twitching. It's not doing that on its own. I'm making it do that. And then suddenly I was thinking, well, if I'm making it do that, it means it's still connected. And that made my thoughts of, it was even more important that I got out of there as quickly as possible.
Dan and 2 other injured soldiers were immediately taken to the safety of PB1, where George was on duty.
We seen the casualties starting to come in. I just had a feeling of numbness. I was upset. I was talking to Dan. I actually carried Dan's stretcher onto the helicopter.
And saw a lot of people's faces on the way, and they weren't happy faces. You could see sort of like the realisation that suddenly this isn't a drill. We are in Afghan. People are going to get injured, and it's happened.
Daniel was flown to the emergency department at Camp Bastion, where his condition was stabilised. He was then flown to the UK to have emergency surgery to try to save his arm. Whilst there were no fatalities from the explosion, what happened to Dan and his patrol is a harsh reminder of the dangers that George faces every time he leaves PB1.
You know, you get shot, you tread on a pressure plate, you come in contact with an improvised explosive device. Sometimes it's just down to luck, you know. It could have been our call sign, our section, out on patrol that day and hitting that IED.
Right, so those vehicles get mounted up, get your last boring on.
I have been worrying, but not lost, because now that I'm starting to think he's got loads of people to protect him, so I'm not worrying anymore.
I was worrying a little bit because I don't want him to get killed.
It's Halloween, and 2 weeks since George left. It's been a tough time for 7-year-old Luke.
The day George left, I couldn't even get into school. He was really upset, really upset. He had it in his head, he was never going to see his dad again when he left. Am I going to see you again, Dad? But he was shaking and crying. I've never seen him so upset. It was really horrible to watch. And then leave a space and then put term. Right, so where did you get him? Put swimming.
Swimming.
Sit.
And I would.
To help deal with his dad's absence, he regularly writes to him.
Put Luke. Put your name there. Yeah. Put some kisses on it.
What, last time you sent it, it took like 10 weeks or something?
It wasn't that long. It takes about 3 weeks to get there.
The first one that I sent took quite a while though, didn't it?
About 3 weeks it was.
It wasn't.
That's it.
See these kids look a bit lost, to be honest with you. Obviously this is our first time in this area, so they're probably a bit more shocked than we are over what's going on.
Even though father of 2 George is over 3,500 miles from home, he has constant reminders of what he has left behind.
Share, yeah? Share.
You're fine.
Nice, good. They're good, yeah. Yeah, they remind me quite a lot. See the sharing as well. Thank you. Thank you. Nice. Yeah, they remind me a lot of home. You know, just seeing any child around here does. Yeah, he's off now. Sorry? I've got no colour, no. You like? Yeah. Good? Good to share, isn't it? Good to share.
After being blown up by an IED, Daniel Majid was flown back to the UK to have emergency surgery to try and save his arm.
The operation took about 6 hours, I think. They put the plate in down here. They've repaired the triceps, and they've moved some flesh around to fill the gap. It severed a nerve as well up here. That's caused the droop, they call it, in the wrist, and that's me trying to do that. And if I do that, that's me trying to do that. There is no movement.
Daniel is confident his body is strong enough to make a quick and full recovery so he can get back out to Afghanistan.
I was joking with him and saying, well, something about his arm thing about him. I said, well, you can still shoot with one arm. And he laughed. He said, yeah, I could go back there and do something, couldn't I?
I certainly think there's unfinished business. I don't think it's not over for me. If I can get this my wrist sorted out and my arm, and I'm not medically discharged, I'll be back out there.
Dan's only thoughts might be of Afghanistan, but with only a few days until Christmas, George can't take his mind off home.
Well, not as much sad, but, you know, a little bit down. Because normally this time of year, obviously, I'm back at home. I'm getting the build up to Christmas with my little lads, wrapping up all the presents. But I wish I was really there, to be honest with you. Hello, little fella.
Good?
Yeah.
What?
Good, yeah.
Good.
Good.
George has been on the front line for over 2 months. The daily patrols are dangerous, unpredictable, and above all, exhausting.
Just got to be ready for contact. It might not happen. It might happen. But you just still got to keep on the ball. It's not over until we get back to the patrol base. Glad to be back in.
We're going out Boxing Day.
One of the few things keeping George going are the letters he gets from home.
Little picture of him playing football on the grass, Callum and Liam. Makes me smile, brings a smile to my face. It's really morale lifting when you see them pictures, you know, really hits home. I've had another one of 4, Luke here. To Dad, I'm missing you lots and lots. It's just dead emotional, you know, when I see it, like.
Leaving his 2 sons was much harder than he thought it would be.
I said my byes on his front door, and then as I was leaving the door, he just burst out into tears. I felt so guilty, you know, that I was actually leaving him. I just didn't like seeing him in that state, to be honest with you. It was hard. It was very hard. You know, looking back on him now, I think, you know, what have I done? I don't know, it's just hard. I mean, I do miss me boys. I think I've never actually, you know, let out like this now, but when I think about how I actually left him, you know, when I was back at home and seeing him in that state of upset. I just hope, like, you know, he understands.
For over 3 months, electrician George Moffitt has been living and working in one of the most dangerous places in the world.
I've just been on stag for 3 hours. I'm cold, hungry, tired. It's just really Baltic. I just feel like I want to be back in the UK now in my own bed with the central heating on.
But back in the UK, there's been a small disaster. The central heating pipes in George's new home have burst, and his house is ruined.
The floor was all wrecked, the ceilings were down. It was, well, if it had been my house, I'd have been devastated myself. So, luckily we're all tradesmen. You know, we all scav bits off site that we've been working on, and bits we've had in our houses, and we've been here overnight after work doing it. He rewired my house for me anyway, so, you know, can't complain, can I, like, you know.
It's not good news, and everyone has agreed not to tell George. It's been 4 months since Daniel had emergency surgery to save his arm. He is determined to overcome his injuries, and for the last couple of weeks he has been at Headley Court, a specialist military rehabilitation centre.
I've got 4 already.
Where have you got 4? Oh. You've been learning from someone, haven't you, in the group? Sometimes you do let them win, just to get them into it, and then you're going to blast them, really. Right, time to count them up then.
I think I'm patient with other people, just not myself. I think you have to be patient to be a teacher, but I think I might have lost some of my patience.
That's it, go on. See, now it could have been nice, and we could have used the glass nuggets, because they're a little bit easy to grip. But I thought, you know what, he can deal with the harder stuff, marbles. Go on. Is your hand getting tired?
It's just like...
The treatment he undergoes here will help build up the strength in his arm. Something Dan has to concentrate on if he ever wants to return to his job as a PE teacher. But there has been a setback. 3 hours ago, Dan met a nerve specialist, and the prognosis wasn't as good as he had hoped.
He just wants to investigate the nerve again, because there's not been as much progress as would have thought in the amount of time. I think it's 12 weeks since they operated. I always like to push myself, and I always like to sort of test the limits. And this, meeting this morning, it's kind of sort of said, you're not Superman. You do break, and I've got a long way to go to recover.
Yeah, just put it behind your head. No problems here.
Dave hitting the nail on the head and saying, you need to stop pretending. You need to realise that you've got quite a way to go. And it might not fix. And it's just things like that I've just got in my mind, yeah, it's going to fix. It'll take 2 years, but it'll fix. And there is a chance that it won't. So.
later on. And again, Merry Christmas to Ginster and also to Laura and everyone else working on ops at the moment in Afghanistan with the PS.
It may be Christmas Day in the middle of a war zone, but that doesn't stop two para making an effort.
Really?
Hello, son. Merry Christmas. It's Dad, I know. Merry Christmas. You're up early, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, happy Christmas anyway. I miss you as well, I do. Here's my kiss.